Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the After the Frame podcast. My name is Malik, and I am joined as always by.
Hi, my name is Matt.
And this week we are reviewing in the sixth episode Weapons, the new horror movie that hit theaters this week. It's from the same director that did Barbarian. I don't know if you saw Barbarian and how you feel about that, but what were your general thoughts going into this movie?
I'm glad you bring up Barbarian because I have seen it and I actually enjoyed it. To me, I feel like this one is actually a step above Barbarian. But with Barbarian back in 2022 and now Weapons, I feel that Zach Cregger, the director, has pretty much cemented himself as one of the best at blending, that unsettling horror, paranoia, and this wicked, dark humor that sneaks in at just the right moments. What I thought Weapons nailed the most is that sense of mystery mixed with that small town drama. You've got this community, Maybrook, that's grieving something totally unexplainable, and the movie just hooks you right away. The setup is wild. 17 kids from the same third grade class, Mrs. Gandy's class, vanish, just gone. And as the investigation starts, it slowly peels back layers to reveal something way darker than you'd expect, and that's already intriguing on its own. But what really surprised me was how the movie tells the story. Instead of sticking to one main character, it splits into different perspectives. The teacher, the principal, the cop working the case, a grieving parent, and a few others I won't spoil. Each one shows you a different angle of the same tragedy, and every time you switch POVs, you get another piece of the puzzle. It's not really like scary in the traditional sense, but it's super unsettling, and the suspense is great. Like Barbarian, you genuinely have no clue where it's going next, and that unpredictability is half the fun. And then when the movie goes for gore, it goes for it. There are a few moments that had people in my theater literally gasping, and other moments where the absurdity made people laugh in this, I probably shouldn't be laughing at that kind of way. That's what Cregger does so well. He knows exactly when to drop in the comedy without breaking the tension. But overall, Weapons had me hooked from start to finish. The shifting POVs were a risk, but it totally paid off. It's one of those horror thrillers that just keeps you guessing, makes you squirm a little, and throws in just enough dark humor to make it even more fun. Now I'm even more excited to see whatever Zach Cregger does next.
I mean, this movie, as you said, blends so many different styles well. I wasn't expecting it to be so funny. I actually found myself laughing in this much more than some movies over the past month that I think were trying to be a little bit more lighthearted and comedic. I watched this in IMAX, and it's the new thing now. Any horror movie, I'm just going to watch in IMAX. I thought like the sounds made everything that much more unsettling. And I think that this one is much better than Barbarian, in my opinion. This one has a lot of the same aspects, as you said, but it deals with this mystery that unfolds from basically the first second. And we get to see all the characters from different POVs. And then, interestingly enough, we even get to see a POV of one of the children in the class, the one child who doesn't disappear. I thought that this movie was a real refreshing installment in this new way of psychological horror that we've been getting this year, akin to Bring Her Back, even last year with Talk to Me. I think that all of these new horror movies are definitely a step in the right direction. Not the same haunted house, demon possessions. I went into the movie not knowing anything. I saw one teaser trailer for it, and I just knew the concept of that there were these kids that disappeared in a town, and it was going to be a mystery figuring out where they all went. Other than that, I didn't want to know any more information. I went into it kind of blind, and it maybe made my experience a little bit more fun.
Okay, yeah, I don't have anything further, so we can dive right in.
Yeah, take it away.
Sure. All right. Weapons, as we said, starts in this small, quiet town called Maybrook. And right away, it hits you with something super creepy. Exactly 2:17 in the morning, 17 kids, all from the same third grade class, just get up, walk out of their homes, and disappear. No explanation. The next morning, their teacher, Justine Gandy, shows up to class, and there's only one kid there, Alex Lilly. Police start poking around, interview Justine and Alex, but they come up empty. From there, the learning about, we don't get a ton of backstory on the town, which I can appreciate because it's just a standalone town.
Yeah, not really needed.
Yeah, and then it just cuts to all the kids running out. You don't know what causes it. anything like that. But from there, it starts planting the seeds as far as where the story is going. And we get kind of a montage of where the teacher, Mrs. Gandy, played by Julia Garner, is being thrown all this blame for her involvement in these kids missing. There's a really cool scene, cool but powerful, where there's this parent teacher conference type thing, and she gets called up to kind of give her thoughts on the matter, and she can't even get a word in, like, because everybody's all out to get her. And touching back to the class, having it only be, I was in a very similar boat as you. Like, going in, I had only seen that one teaser trailer, and so you see all the kids running, and that's it. I didn't actually know that there was one kid left. I thought it was just the whole class had gone missing. And having it, only be one kid there started to raise my suspicions a little bit, but it was still too early on in the movie for you to know, kind of exactly what was going on.
Yeah, I thought that the way that this movie just opens up, we have there's like a little girl, which is used as kind of the framing device. She's the narrator. I don't think this is a spoiler, and since we're in the spoiler portion anyway, we never get to meet who this little girl is. We assume that it is a girl, perhaps at the school that, the kids disappear from, but we never explicitly learn a name or see her in the movie, really. We just hear her voice, and she's basically telling the audience like the story as if you heard it on the news, and like the way that it was recounted to her, and she's just telling, like, oh, this is what happened, this is what I heard. And we see that in the beginning, and in the end she says that. So as you said, I love how we're basically already just thrown in. Everybody, as you said, if you've seen the trailers, that these kids start running in their weird way with their arms out. And everybody just, they run out into the night. I like that. Yeah, from minute one, they just jump straight to it. They don't give you any backstory. The way that the story progresses in this movie was so well done, and the way it jumps back and forth between things that happen presently to, giving the audience a little bit more of a peek into something that set up another plot point, I thought was also pretty cool. But yeah, they have this teacher who is basically getting the brunt of the blame, and I didn't understand that. I thought, like, why would all the parents immediately just like look to her as if like she kidnapped them, or like, but obviously when you're a parent you want answers, like all your kids are gone. I saw a lot of people drawing some parallels with like the Columbine shootings, and how the parents were, obviously outraged. And yeah, this town hall meeting or parent teacher conference, where the principal, who is played by Benedict Wong, who people might know as Wong in the MCU. There's quite a few MCU people in this movie. Thanos is also in it, Josh Brolin. Yeah, he's there trying to, make sure that the parents have like a say in everything, like they have an open discussion. And basically one of the dads, Josh Brolin, calls up the teacher and says, well, we want to hear from her. We don't really want to hear from this therapist who's, trying to help us through our grief. And what I liked about Josh Brolin's character is that they didn't get too many parents involved. He was kind of just the vehicle within the whole movie of the parents' point of view. So you got the teacher's point of view, and then you got the parents' point of view of these kids disappearing, which I thought was really cool. And yeah, in this scene, we just get to see that she's being blamed for everything. People are like following her. We see that she has a little bit of a drinking problem, and this is not helping. But yeah, those are my thoughts on that first scene. I thought like it was pretty well done to introduce all the characters and the themes.
Yeah, I will say in my notes, just for clarity's sake, I kind of clumped a lot of things together, kind of how they happen, versus breaking it down from each perspective. I tried keeping it as perspective based as possible, but there might be some clumping here and there. But yeah, from there, the movie does something, I really loved. It keeps shifting perspectives, so you see the story through different eyes. At first, we're with Justine, played by Julia Garner, and then the principal, Marcus Miller, puts her on leave because the community starts whispering that maybe she had something to do with the kids going missing. There was no evidence or anything against her, but okay. And then, yeah, as you mentioned, she spirals. She's drinking. She's hooking up with her married ex, who's also a cop, Paul Morgan, played by Alden Ehrenreich, famously Han Solo. But Julia Garner, Justine, she's still worried about Alex. She follows him home one day and sees every window covered in newspaper and his parents just standing there blank-faced. And so she pushes Marcus to do a wellness check. Marcus is like, okay, like after all this persisting maybe, like, don't twist my arm. And then she starts having these nightmares about the missing kids and this creepy woman. And the last segment of her actual segment is, one night she's parked outside Alex's house. She falls asleep and she's just sawing logs, dozing away. And then we cut to the house, and the woman, struts out of the house, comes up to the car. And initially, I thought it was like a knife. Like, I thought she was coming out of the car to, like, stab her or do something. But no, we see she has a pair of scissors, and a lock of Justine's hair gets snipped, and that's how we end Justine's segment.
I like this first part because I thought that she was just going to be the main character of the whole movie. And what the movie did was just have people that you thought were going to be these side characters. You actually get to see their POV. But from Justine's point, I thought it was interesting. I guess in her previous school, we find out that she had like some issues with like boundaries with the children. It was just like she tries to feel more like a mom and overstep as almost like a parent, we find out, rather than a teacher. So I think there was a time where she offered to take like a child home after school because they didn't have a ride, stuff like, giving the children hugs. So they kind of play on the fact that like some of the parents are a little uncomfortable with her already, and then when all of the kids went, missing, it just added more fuel to the fire there. But yeah, she's basically being ridiculed by the whole town. We see that somebody has painted witch on the side of her car. What I really appreciated about her character, she goes to the police. The police are doing, how they do in horror movies, like, oh, we're just going to file a report, so on and so forth. You see that she actually genuinely cares for the children in her class. She goes to visit the only child that's left. She wants to like talk to him, make sure he's okay. The principal is like, I think you should just stay away, like just stay low, like we don't need any issues. Eventually, as you said, yeah, she follows him home, and he kind of blows up at her and says, stop following me, and runs into his house. And yeah, she's, at this point I was like, oh, she needs to kind of relax. She kind of like goes around the backyard, and she sees one little slip where the newspapers are not hung up on the window, and you see the parents, or we assume are the parents, just sitting in the dark, just not moving. And that raises some alarms for her. And then she's trying to get, the principal involved and trying to figure out what's going on. And then, yeah, that prompts her to stay there that night, or like, kind of watch out there, like down the street. And then she ends up falling asleep, I guess, leaves her car unlocked. And yeah, we don't know why this lady comes and grabs her hair, but we'll find out soon enough. I thought it was very good introduction into how she's spiraling out of control, with her drinking and everything, making maybe not the best decisions, but it was an interesting point of view for sure out of all the ones that they've done.
Yeah, no, I agree. After that scene, we switch over to Archer Graff, played by Josh Brolin, Thanos. Don't get on his bad side, otherwise he'll snap you into dust. He is one of the dads whose son is missing. I'll be honest, I kind of wish they fleshed out his character a little bit more. Like, of all the different POVs, his was the one that I honestly thought was the least interesting, in my opinion. But he's, we come to find out he's having the same nightmares about this woman, and he's frustrated the cops aren't getting anywhere. So he starts his own investigation. He figures out all the kids were running in the same direction the night they vanished by looking at his footage, looking at other parents' footage through the Ring doorbells, but he just can't figure out exactly where they were going.
I think maybe why they didn't go too deep into him is because, as I said, I feel like he's just the vehicle for just the parents' point of view. And I think that they're just trusting the audience. Like, obviously, if your kid went missing, the outrage and the obsession would obviously be there. But out of all the parents in the town whose kids went missing, all the other ones have kind of like accepted it a little bit. They just are kind of like, oh, well, the cops say that they're getting the feds involved, but he's not accepting that. He to the point where he's like literally not even sleeping with his wife anymore. He sleeps in his son's room, Matthew. We find out his name is. I immediately thought when we get into that scene, he's like on his son's bed. His son has Batman sheets. I was like, oh, this kid's a cool kid. We come to find out he's a little bit of a prick actually at school. But yeah, he's sleeping in the bed, and he can't let it go. Obviously, it's his like only son. Him and Justine, they're having these weird dreams, kind of almost like premonitions. His is a little bit more telling, like helps him figure some stuff out, I suppose. And yeah, they see this woman at first, like because they don't show her very much. It's like kind of jump scare. I thought it was like a clown, like the way her makeup was. I was like, I obviously didn't know what was going on with that. She plays a very big role in this, of course. But yeah, in his dream, we see him basically waking up, and then we see him looking through the POV of his son running out, runs into the woods, follows him, and then we see him like run into another, like the house again. He goes upstairs and is trying to talk to his son. And then, yeah, we get the jump scare of the woman. But yeah, we find out that he's a construction worker of some sort in the town, and he's been getting, his job is suffering because he's not focused and all that. And then he decides to say, I'm going to look at this ring camera, as you said, and he sees that his son runs in a specific direction. He gets a map of the town. He draws out a perfect line. And then he goes to another parent and asks, hey, I know this is weird. Can I see your ring camera footage? I know you gave it to the police. The mom is not having it. She's not comfortable. He kind of stalks and waits for the dad to come home. And we get a nice cameo from Justin Long, who was also in Barbarian. And he agrees to bring him in and show him. And the mom is pissed about it. And then he uses the sidewalk and counts over and sees exactly where she ran off, uses that, draws another line, and he sees that the kids intersect at a point in the town, and he just has to figure out what that point is. That's basically his introduction, and he's very interested in the teacher still and wants to talk to her, to Justine, find out if she knows more than what she's telling.
Yeah. And then after his segment, we follow Paul, who is played by Alden Ehrenreich. He's the cop in this story. We cut to his scene, and he's just out on patrol, and he spots this local addict who we come to find out is named James. He spots this addict like breaking in, assumingly breaking into something, and this warehouse. And so he chases him down, and he's very, I want to say, aggressive with him, but we come to find out he's more aggressive after the fact. But he eventually chases him down. He puts him in handcuffs and as anything, and he asks, as any officer should, like, hey, do you have anything in your pockets that's going to poke me, anything that'll hurt me? And the addict is like, oh, no, like, I don't have anything. You'll be fine. And then Paul reaches into his pocket and immediately gets poked with a needle. His finger starts bleeding out. And then next thing you know, Paul just mollywops him, and the addict, James, just falls right over. And Paul gets busted because he has the recording device at the front of his car. So he's worried everything's, on film. And then, so once James wakes up, they hash out this little agreement, basically saying, hey, I don't want to see you again. And he's full-blown panic mode that James will report him. And then from there, we kind of catch up to more of the current events, I guess. He falls off the wagon and sleeps with his ex-girlfriend, Justine. And then I'm going to kind of segue into James's scene here a little bit as well. But James, the addict, he breaks into Alex's house, the kid, the one kid that was left, thinking it's abandoned. He's rummaging around for what he can find to sell, because he's a drug addict. He's looking for money to buy drugs and just live life. He's living in a tent in like the woods, and he is trying to scrounge together cash to survive. And he gets to this house, he starts looting their silverware and anything that he can sell for monetary value. And he just stumbles upon, he finds all the missing kids just chilling in the basement. And from then on, he's kind of like, okay, well, this situation is a little fucked up. And so he leaves there. He runs to the pawn shop to sell everything he scrounged together. And then he gets this brilliant, bright idea. He sees a poster offering a $50,000 reward for the location of the kids. And he's like, man, look, think of all the drugs I can get with that money. So he's calling the police station. And then we come to find out that he runs to the police station to tell somebody. And then Paul spots him. He chases him into the woods, and kind of combining both scenes here, they both see the woman from the nightmares. But James is hiding in his tent, hiding from this cop because he's afraid he's going to get beaten up, and who knows what's going to happen with him. And then Paul ends up taking a couple syringes to the face. He's got a nice little like 3-pronged proc on his face. Then he ends up arresting James, but James is pleading with him. He's like, hey, I saw where these kids are. And so Paul takes his word and he trusts him. And So they drive to the house, and he goes inside, which I thought was very odd because any other time that anybody had gone to the house and knocked, there was no response. But granted, this was at night, and he just waltzes right in. The door opens for him, and then James is sitting in the back seat, just trapped. And then next thing you know, Paul is, we assume, to be possessed and drags James back to the house.
I thought it was so interesting from back when we did Justine's perspective in that beginning part. You see him, she's at a bar, and then he comes in, and that's how we're first introduced to him. So they obviously have this relationship. He kind of lies to the audience and is saying, like, oh, I'm not with, I forget. We find out he's married. So in my mind, I was like, oh, maybe he has this on and off girlfriend type thing. And then we come to find out he's just straight up married. That night, they end up hooking up, and then we switch back to obviously now we're seeing from his perspective. She drops him back off at his car and everything. We find out that the police chief is actually his father-in-law. Donna eventually attacks Justine after finding out that they kind of had a thing, and then because of that, we see that Paul and the police chief are a little bit at odds. They don't talk, but we see that the police chief obviously knows what he did to his daughter. But before anything can happen with that, he goes outside to his car, and then he sees the guy James approaching the police station. James was coming there to collect his $50,000 after he went in and saw the kids. And then he chases him down. From James' POV, he's struggling a little bit. You see him going up to every car he passes, trying to open, and he eventually finds one open and steals a little girl's tablet. He tries to pawn that off to get some cash, and it doesn't work. Yeah, then he goes, this scene, one of my favorite scenes, I think, the most suspenseful, or one of the most suspenseful. He goes into this house, Alex's house, and it's just completely pitch black. He's rummaging around. He comes across the parents who are just sitting on the couch. They're unresponsive, so he continues to rob the house. And then we hear something going on upstairs, and all of a sudden the parents, like in a trance, spring into action, start attacking him basically, and he manages to leave just in time. Before that, he stumbles into the basement and he sees all the children there. So that's how he ends up trying to give that information to the police. Yeah, and then once he and Paul reconnect, and he arrests him and he convinces him, hey, I'm trying to get this $50,000. I know where these kids are. I can even show you, like, put me in the back of your car and take me there. I'll literally show you what house it is. When Paul goes up to the door, we actually see for the first time somebody answer the door, and you kind of see from the car's POV, he's talking to somebody. He goes inside, and yeah, it's been hours later, and then all of a sudden we see him storm out and drag James in, and then that's where it cuts. I thought that this is where the movie started to pick up. We're starting to put some more pieces together now that we see where the kids are and everything. Then we get to the next POV, which I think actually reveals the most out of exactly what's going on.
Yeah, no, I agree. The next POV is Marcus, the principal, Benedict Wong's character. Marcus, he gets his own chunk of the story too. Alex's aunt goes to the school after he eventually puts in the wellness check that Justine requested. Alex's aunt Gladys, she shows up. She says she's taking care of the family because the parents are sick. And then later, she shows up at Marcus's home, claiming that she missed the bus, and he's the only one who can help her out here, which is a little fishy.
Mm-hmm.
And Marcus's husband is, of course, like, hey, you're not going to leave this innocent poor woman right outside and not help her. So he drags her in, but that's not going to go over well. This is where my confusion started to set in, because there was a little bit of setup with Aunt Gladys, but not a ton. But she shows up, she makes herself at home. She's like, hey, I need a bowl of water. She's like, I'm so thirsty, but not a cup, not a glass, not a mug, a bowl. And turns out she's doing some ritual on him. She got a ribbon from visiting Marcus's office at the school, and we don't know what this ritual is doing just yet. She's got this twig, and around it is this ribbon. And it's like, okay, like where's this going? And then she pricks herself with the twig, bleeding out onto the twig. And she's performing this ritual. And Marcus is all of a sudden just in a trance at her command, at her bidding. And unfortunately, this poor guy getting involved, Marcus ends up killing his husband, just because he's the innocent one in all this, and he's getting thrown in the loop. And then we later find out that after that, Gladys is the one who has the lock that we saw earlier from Justine's hair. And by performing this little ritual again, Marcus goes after Justine, just immediately sprinting out and running in the same fashion as the kids. Justine, we kind of see this scene in Justine's segment, but Justine and Archer, they run to each other at a gas station, and then Marcus shows up out of nowhere. He attacks Justine, and then Archer eventually pulls him away, but that doesn't work. Marcus is running like a brick. He's going to do whatever it takes, but eventually Justine escapes, and Marcus is running after her, and Archer's following him. Eventually, Marcus gets hit by a car chasing her. That was a pretty gruesome scene because you just kind of see him like explode. Um, and then not long after that fact, that's when Justine and Archer kind of put it together, combining their perspectives on it. They find that the kids were all heading toward Alex's house.
As we're doing this review, obviously with the different POVs jumping around, there are a few scenes that interconnect. As you mentioned, there's the scene where they're at the gas station, and then we, as the audience, for the first time, are seeing Marcus run in that same way with his hands out and just starts strangling her, and then that's how that scene cuts. So then we start to build and find out what happens. Marcus has this meeting with the aunt. As soon as the aunt like walks in, the assistant is like kind of thrown by her because of her appearance. We see that this is the same lady from the dreams that everybody's been having. So in this scene, I guess you start to kind of realize that she is the one doing something. You don't really know what she's doing yet or why she's doing it, but you know that she's the one that's behind everything. She gives off very weird vibes. She ends up going to his house, doing this ritual. I thought was so weird that the husband and Marcus just sat there while she did it. Like she literally goes and cuts a piece of the husband's hair. Like didn't even try and stop her. They just sit there and watch her do this whole ritual. Everything is explained in Alex. So we're going to jump to, there's an Alex's POV, which kind of really reveals everything that's going on, why everything happened, which is the last POV that we get. We just see basically that she's been doing some sort of witchcraft. She has this twig. She pricks her finger with it. It's part of the ritual that she needs to have blood come from her. She has this bowl, and then she snaps the twig. She takes something that belongs to somebody. She wraps it around the twig, gets another piece of like that somebody's hair that she wants to kill or to attack, and she wraps all of these things up in the twig, snaps it. Marcus just turns into a trance and kills his husband. Can't do anything about it. She wraps Justine's hair around it next, and then he just immediately runs out the house and goes after her. And this is where we get the name of the movie, Weapons. She's just weaponizing these people like they're almost like heat-seeking missiles. Marcus ends up getting killed, getting hit by the car after his whole skirmish with Justine. They get together and they talk, and then he shows her the map and they see the intersecting. And then she's like, oh, I know this house. This is Alex's house. Something must be going on over there. Let me get your thoughts on this. I thought it was so weird because the movie uses ring cameras and footage and everything. When the movie begins and you see the kids running out and you see that all parents have to go on is their ring camera and then their kids disappear in the distance, I was thinking initially like, oh, they're running into the woods, so obviously there's no foot, like you're not going to be able to find that. But then you come to find out that all these kids basically ran to another house like a few neighborhoods over, and I was like, nobody else had any footage, like no other ring cameras, that whole neighborhood, nobody saw, what was it, 17 kids running. I thought that was a little weird that nobody had any footage.
Yeah, I'll kind of touch on that tidbit before I give my thoughts. But so the way, and that can be considered a plot hole. Jumping ahead a little bit into Alex's scene, we find that all these kids run to Alex's house. But there's a very specific shot that kind of points to what you just referenced, as they're this house at the end of a street. And to get there, the kids all run up this street and go one by one into the house.
Pass at least like 5-6 houses.
You would
easily.
think one of those houses would have some sort of, not even a ring camera, just any sort
Something.
of camera display, anything that they could
Even
use
like the light posts or something like
Right.
there, you know, like how there's just, you know, security footage, like thing.
Yeah, that is one thing that you can think about. But yeah, so we finally get to the flashback that ties it all together. Gladys, the main, I'm gonna call her a witch because that's my
She
presumption.
is, yeah, she is.
She was sick when she moved in with Alex's family. I believe that they mentioned that she's like an aunt to.
On the mom's side, yeah. But not, the parents don't, they make a point of saying the parents don't even know her. Like, even the
Right.
mom doesn't know her, and she's allegedly related to her. So there's a bunch of theories that this lady is not even related to her and she's just showed up, but go
Yeah,
on.
that was a confusing segment for me.
Mhm.
Yeah, so she's sick when she moves in, and there's this strange potted tree in her room. And over time, as she starts to establish more of herself in the house, she gets healthier, conveniently enough, while poor Alex, man, this kid's gonna be traumatized. Alex's parents slip into this trance, and Gladys threatens Alex to keep her secret that she's here and she's doing whatever she's doing. And eventually, when she starts getting sick again, she eventually tells him to steal something personal from every classmate so she can essentially feed on them too. He goes along with it, thinking that she'll leave when she's better. But instead, she summons all the kids to the house.
There was a theme within this that they started setting up, like if you were paying attention to the background from back in Justine's original Nightmare. On when she goes into her classroom, they set up that she's teaching the class about parasites in their science class. They have ringworms and tapeworms and all that. It comes back again, like during Alex's portion when he's actually physically in the class. They're talking about parasites again. And then when Marcus and his husband were sitting down to eat before Gladys arrives, they're watching a documentary about a parasite taking over insects. So basically, they're just phoning in that this witch, Gladys, is basically using everybody with these rituals and draining them of life so that she can continue to live and be healthy. And in essence, being a parasite and just feeding off of everyone. Alex comes home one day and his parents are just unresponsive, and she's all of a sudden up and chipper and everything. And she even demonstrates that she can make the parents do whatever she wants. The parents start stabbing themselves with forks, and she says, I can make them do whatever I want. It's basically threatening Alex, if you don't keep my secret, don't tell a single soul. So a lot of the times when the kids disappear, we find out in the first shots of the movie, the cops are asking him a bunch of questions. Poor Alex, he's like, this kid just has to keep everything to himself. He's just afraid that his parents are going to get killed. Justine talks to him one on one when she almost catches him stealing. All of the kids in the class have like a cubby, and he decides, I'll just take literally everybody's like nameplate from their cubby as like a thing. She almost catches him, and she's saying, oh, you've been more quiet than usual. Do you want to talk? And poor Alex, as I said, like, he just has to kind of bear this whole thing. Gladys even forces him to feed the kids soup and the parents soup so that they can stay alive, obviously. And she's just up in the parents' bedroom, has like her own little makeshift like witchcraft thing going on. And then yeah, we'll get into that last scene, still from tying in Alex's POV, and then where we left off Justine and Archer.
Yeah, I will kind of summarize my thoughts on the ending, the epilogue, and like my thoughts as a whole, just to kind of keep it succinct.
Mm-hmm.
But the ending just gets intense. Justine and Archer break into the house. They get attacked by the possessed Paul and James, and they're fighting back and forth. And this was I had to like kind of shield my eyes when this came on, because Justine is fighting with Paul, her ex, and Archer is fighting with James, the addict. Uh, Archer's segment I thought was pretty funny because
Yeah.
he just keeps one punching James and he just keeps knocking over and he just gets right back up, and it's just a repetition back and forth. But Justine's fight with Paul, Paul's in this trance, he's doing whatever it takes to take Justine down. And they're in the kitchen and there aren't many weapons you can use against yourself. And so Justine takes this potato peeler and it's just like grazing the side of his face. I was like, that's a little disgusting. And Paul's
Not flinching at all.
yeah,
Yeah.
he's unfazed because he's in this trance. But eventually, Justine gets a hold of a gun and shoots Paul, and Archer and James are fighting long enough to where they actually enter into the basement. Um, but Justine shoots James to save Archer. And then cutting up to upstairs, Alex gets chased by his entranced parents, but he hides in Gladys's room and copies the ritual that she's done, but he uses a lock of her hair. Meanwhile, as he's preparing all this, Archer and Justine are in the basement, and Archer finds his son, Matthew, or at least he thinks he's going to try to, because eventually he finds Gladys. And Gladys, this was one concern that they kind of moved really quick with this. You know, we see Archer come back up and he's immediately putting Justine in a chokehold, which I thought they moved awfully quick into getting Archer into a trance to have her kind of act on Gladys's accord. And so, yeah, Archer goes up and has Justine in a chokehold, and Gladys is talking to Justine, kind of, you know, talking to what she's done and all that. But going back to Alex, you know, he's copying this ritual, and in doing this ritual using a lock of her hair, that breaks Gladys's hold on the kids. Uh, they all wake up, chase Gladys down through the neighborhood, which I'm surprised she made it as far as she did. Like, for all these kids with all this energy, like, and this older, dying woman, she made it awfully far.
She was sucking the energy out of them, though. That's what I took it as. Like, she was very spry running away from them, and she's just been spending weeks taking their life. So I kind of thought it like that's how I took it as.
Okay, fair enough. But they chase her down through the neighborhood, and eventually they make contact with her, and they literally tear her apart. I thought that was pretty brutal. But then, you know, after this segment, we find that the spell is broken on everybody unless you're dead, and Archer gets his son back. And we cut to the epilogue, which is narrated by the same girl from the very beginning. And the epilogue is pretty bittersweet. Alex moves in with another aunt, hopefully one he actually knows, but his parents are institutionalized and the other kids go home, but a lot of them are still catatonic. Some eventually, you know, start talking again, but you can tell this town is never going to be the same. And that's how the film ends. And that's the thing that, you know, I think if I had to summarize it here, you know, Weapons isn't the kind of horror movie that's all about jump scares. You know, it's unsettling, but it keeps you hooked with that mystery and the way it jumps between characters, showing you different sides of the same tragedy. It's unpredictable, just like Barbarian was. And when it does get violent, you know, it goes for it. There were a few moments that had people in my theater gasping, and some messed up bits that were so absurd you couldn't help but laugh. It's a dark, twisted, fun ride, and the shifting POV, you know, made it feel fresh the whole way through. What are your thoughts?
We got the aunt now is kind of showing that she's full in control of everybody because they kind of come in now, and then you got Paul and James, you know, running after them and everything. She creates this salt line, and she tells like Alex, don't pass this salt line. Same thing happens when they enter the house. She like purposefully leaves salt on the floor. As soon as they pass the line is when they attack. So you see that she has these rituals that, like, you know, at the drop of a hat, anybody can get attacked by her quote unquote weapons. Alex very smartly just takes some of the ritual in his own hands, snaps the twig. All the kids immediately turn on her, and she immediately knows it as well. Like, she runs out the house. The kids can't be stopped. They're breaking through windows, breaking down doors. They through another person's house, which I thought was pretty funny, and it was just like an absurd scene. And yeah, they eventually catch up to her and they tear her apart limb from limb, which, as the audience, because of what she was doing to this whole town and these kids, you feel she got what she deserved. She was messing around with all these people's lives, and now look, it backfired on her. From there, it breaks the spell on a few people. I like the continuity of Archer. Immediately was back to normal because he was maybe under the spell for like 10 minutes. So it just shows that, like, the longer that she's been feeding on you, like an actual parasite, it's like your brain is just gone. It's mush. So unfortunately, Alex's parents were, as you said, catatonic. They basically had to go to a home. People had to like look after them, and then he moved in with another aunt. All the kids got back to their respective parents. We find out from the narrator at the end. She says that she heard that some of them even started talking again. From what we see when Archer picks up Matthew, he's still looking like he's in a trance, not speaking, not really reacting, and he's just carrying him home. And yeah, that's just how it ends. And I thought that this movie, just like Barbarian, was like twisted in a lot of ways, had its comedy. But what I appreciate is that the comedy didn't feel forced, like how some horror movies feel like they need to have comedic relief. This was very organic. And as you said, there are certain instances where maybe we shouldn't be laughing as an audience, but we just can't help. I really appreciated what this movie and what a lot of the movies this year are doing for the horror genre. It's different. It's fresh. I'm excited to see what he does next. I know he is in talks to do Resident Evil. And then I also found out, today that he's looking to write something for James Gunn's DCU, which I'd be excited to see. I think that this director understands the balance between comedy and horror very well. The cast was excellent in their roles. And yeah, I highly recommend that anybody who's a horror fan, go and watch it on the biggest screen you can.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to summarize.
Yeah. Do you have any other closing thoughts before the ratings?
Not really. Well, I did do some reading on the side. It's funny you kind of mentioned on the cast. The cast was almost a lot different.
Oh yeah, Pedro Pascal was gonna be in it. I'm glad he's not.
So after that announcement, I actually read into it a little bit more. So Pedro Pascal was going to play the role of Josh Brolin's character, but
Mm-hmm.
he had to drop out with Fantastic Four.
Mm,
But the main female lead, Jean, was almost. I don't know if you have seen her or anything, and I'm gonna try and not butcher her name.
careful.
Or she's Norwegian. The main female lead was almost Renata Rinsve.
What
She
was she in?
was in the Apple TV show Presumed Innocent, but she was also in A Different Man, which came out last year with what's his name, Sebastian Stan.
Oh, okay.
She's been in a couple smaller things, which I think this would have been a good role for her to kind of like branch out a little bit. But
Right.
as a whole, like the main cast was almost completely different. Tom Burke was originally going to play the cop, Paul. He was Praetorian Jack in Mad Max or
Mm,
Furiosa,
yeah.
but that role ended up going to Alden Ehrenreich, Han Solo. And the most interesting one here to me, Benedict Wong's character was originally Brian Tyree Henry, who was a Paperboy in Atlanta. He voiced Jefferson Davis in the Spider-Verse movies. He was in
The
Bullet
Eternals,
Train. He was in Eternals. He's been in a lot of things. He was originally going to play the
the principal.
principal. Yeah. The cast changed quite a bit.
I also want to shout out the actor Carrie Christopher who plays Alex in this movie, just like the actors the child actors that were in Bring Her Back. I thought that they did a fantastic job. The cast that he's around is so star-studded, but I thought that from him being this sullen kid that has to keep the secret to keep his parents alive to his reaction in the house when he's scared seeing his parents, I thought he did a really good job. The cast that they ended up going with did perfectly fine. I really like Julia Garner in this role. It was different than the roles that I've seen her do before. Obviously, last month we saw her in Fantastic Four as the Silver Surfer, completely different roles. Yeah. Josh Brolin, as you said, didn't have a ton to do in the movie, his character, but he served his purpose, ended up getting his son and doing what he had to do. Right now, as the time of this recording, Rotten Tomatoes has this at a 96% for critics, and it is at an 88% for the audience, and it is sitting at a 3.9 out of 5 on Letterboxd. I personally really love this movie. As soon as I came out the theater, I was like, wow, that was really good. Took me a little while. Like I took like a day or two to actually rate it and like really sit down with my thoughts on it. But as I said, like it's definitely up there. It's definitely breaking the top 10 this year for me, unless the rest of the year is just fantastic, which I doubt. But yeah, it's high up there for me. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed this movie. What about you?
Yeah, you made a good point about taking some time to think on it. I have actually yet to formalize my rating. Right now, I have it at about a 4 out of 5 star rating, but I kind of feel like I need to see it again just to kind of grasp everything again and just come to my cohesive thoughts. I don't think much will change, but I kind of want to compare it to other films just to kind of finalize where it's going to stand. I have an idea of where it's going to stand, but I think you made a good point about it being, a strong film on the year. I will say, like, comparing apples to oranges, our last episode we reviewed together. At the time, I had that at a 4 star. I did actually watch it again. I downgraded it to 3.5 stars. I would take Weapons over Together pretty easily.
As would I.
But as far as where it'll stand in my rankings, I'm honestly not sure. I haven't updated, so just to kind of go through it, I haven't updated my rankings in a little while. The last couple things I've seen, I saw it Together twice. That was I wasn't sure where that was going to rank on my list, but that is not in my top 10. But I did see The Naked Gun, which was also under consideration. That movie is in my top 10. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And outside of this, the most recent the film that I've seen that I rated was the unbelievably bad War of the Worlds that came out on
The Ice Cube
Prime.
one.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Ice Cube one. Not to go too far off topic, but it's probably one of the worst like 5 movies I have ever seen in my entire life. Like it is terrible.
That's what
Absolutely
everybody's saying.
terrible.
I won't even waste my time.
I don't blame you. I watched it just to see just how bad it was,
And
and I was not
you got a
shocked.
bang for your buck, dude.
Yeah. But yeah, I would not be shocked to see this ranked somewhere in my top 10. I just think I need to see it again to, fully establish where it'll sit. But yeah, I would
Yeah.
thoroughly recommend it.
Yeah. As I said, right now, as it stands, we're only in August right now. So quite a few more films that I'll have to watch, but it's in my top 5 right now.
Wow. You mentioned kind of comparing it to Bring Her Back. How far of a gap is
Very
there?
close.
Very
I'll
close.
tell
Okay.
you right now. It's literally this is 4, Bring Her Back is 5, and it's literally off by point 0.1 in
Wow.
my
Okay. Yeah,
calculations.
that is very close. So, like looking at my list now, if we want to use Bring Her Back as a reference, I have Bring Her Back at 8. So,
As I said, if you're a horror movie fan, and we're getting into that time of the year, I definitely recommend it. If you just enjoy horror movies and thrillers, a little bit of mystery, I don't see how you won't love this movie. It kind of has everything. It has the comedy, it has the drama, has the jump scares. It handles it all really well. Puts it together in this pretty nice package. And because of it, I'll be watching all of my horror movies on IMAX if it's available. So yeah, those are my recommendations for you.
yeah, I think that's a good point to end on.
Yeah. Next week, we kind of have something a little bit different for you guys. Not quite a movie review, but just look out on social media for it, and you'll see kind of what we got going on.
Hopefully everybody goes to check this movie out, and if you did, if you've already seen it, hopefully you enjoyed our breakdown on it.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will catch you all next week. And feel free to leave us any comments. Reach out to us on social media with any thoughts that you've had on any of the movies that we've reviewed so far. And we'd love to interact and discuss with you guys. So, yeah, we'll see you all next week. You guys take care. Thank you for listening.